Chapter 4 The Birth of Western Monotheism, Abraham and His Sumerian Roots. This presentation covers times around 2000 BCE, written and produced by Thomas Ty Seal. Copyright Thomas Ty Seal unless otherwise noted. No one can say for sure when monotheism began. Traces of it no doubt existed in many cultures among people who perceived that there was a single God who was sovereign over all, or that there is but a single creative reality. Before the year 2000 BCE, however, evidence of such traces are rare. Rather, it appears the more common belief was that there were many gods ruling over nature's forces, or that there was one divine order enforced by kings. Around the year 2000 BCE, about the beginning of the Xia dynasty in China, however, things began to change in the lower eastern Fertile Crescent. There in the Sumerian city of a remarkable family was about to become worldwide champions of what would become frank monotheism. Archaeologically, is most famous for the remains of a large ziggurat, a stepped pyramid, shown here in an artist's recreation. Ziggurats recreate the primal mountain from which the gods ruled, a belief found in many ancient civilizations. Construction began around 2000 BCE by the order of King Ur-Nammu of the third dynasty of Ur. Over the next 1500 years, the structure gradually deteriorated. Then, in the 6th century BCE, it was rebuilt by the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The 6th century BCE structure also deteriorated, but in 1980 of our area, the bottom was partially restored by the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. Sumerians had interesting beliefs. We know of their creation story from what is believed to be the oldest written story on earth, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It explains that originally there was only Nammu, the primal sea. Nammu gave birth to On, the sky god, and Ki, the earth god. On and Ki mated, and Ki gave birth to Enlil, the god of wind and storm, the chief god of the earthly pantheon. Enlil, the god of wind, married Ninlil, the goddess of grain, and produced Nana, the moon god. The engraving here is from a small clay cylinder which belonged to a governor of summer about 2100 BCE. The governor is being led to the king, who is seated, and the crescent moon above him represents the moon god Nana. Nana's symbols were the crescent moon and the bull, whose horns resemble the crescent moon. When the city of was the dominant city in summer, Nana became the chief god of summer. The ziggurat at was dedicated to Nana. Nana married Ningal, who gave birth to Inanna, goddess of love and war, and Utu, the sun god. In Acadia, the empire that arose just north of Summer, Nana is called Sin, so Nana is sometimes called Nana-Sin, and in Acadia, Inanna was called Ishtar, and Utu was called Shamash. Shown here at the bottom right of the map of the Fertile Crescent, was the home of a man called Terah. Terah was likely an Amorite, not a Sumerian. An Amorite is a member of the nomadic, polytheistic Semitic tribes which likely originated in Arabia and who seized land and threatened cities like In the Sumerian language, they were known as the Martu, and in the Akkadian language, further north, they were called the Amaru. The Hebrew Bible tells us that Terah took his family, including his son Abram, and left moving north. settling in the provincial city of Harran. He stopped in Harran, a village now in southeastern Turkey, where his family lived for many years and when Terah eventually died. Like Harran was dedicated to the moon god Nana-Sin. Sometime around 2000 BCE, the Hebrew God spoke to a son of Terah named Abram at Harran. It wouldn't have been unusual for a god, there were many, to speak to a mortal in ancient times. Priests, supposedly, heard from them regularly. What was unusual, however, was what God said. God told Abram to leave Harran and proceed, quote, "to the land I will show you." Then God said, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Of course, no one knows what God really said. The Hebrew Bible was written down more than 1,000 years after this, but that's the oral tradition that was recorded. But when famine struck Canaan, Abram and his family traveled to Egypt, where Abram's wife Sarah, whom he said was his sister, was taken to live with the Pharaoh. Egypt, however, also experienced hard times. The Bible says that Abram's God sent plagues upon Egypt to get the Pharaoh to release Abram's wife, which he did. Abram left Egypt and moved in stages back to Canaan. In Canaan, God changed Abram's name to Abraham, which means father of multitudes. He gave Abram all the land from Egypt to the Euphrates and blessed Abram with children from his 3 wives, Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. Canaan was the land of El, the high god of the Canaanites. El simply means God, and El was and is everywhere in Canaan and modern Israel. He's in Israel, Bethel, Carmel, Gabriel, Michael, Ezekiel, Raphael, Samuel, Joel, and many more. Like Nana-Sin, El could also be represented as a bull, symbolizing power and fertility, as shown in the middle panel here. There's also a mysterious figure named Melchizedek in the Bible, who blesses Abraham in the name of Elon El, God Most High. El's chief wife was Asherah, who gave birth to the lesser gods. Hadad, the god of fertility and rain, often called Baal, which means Lord. Yam, the god of the sea. Mot, the god of death. Anath, the goddess of love and war. And Dagon, the god of grain. Abraham's El was different from Canaanites' El. Abraham's El interacted with humans. The El of Canaan did not. This was a major new development in religion. Religion evolves. El was a reasonably friendly God. He assumed human form, and in Genesis 18, he appeared beside a tree and was invited for dinner by Abraham and his wife. He gave advice to Abraham and his family, guided their wanderings, told them who to marry, and spoke to them in dreams. He even wrestled with Jacob in Genesis 32. We all sometimes wrestle with God. And he appeared at the top of Jacob's ladder, where he was called El-Ohai, Avram, God of Abraham. The trouble with high gods, then and now, is that they often seem too remote. Their children or messengers are easier to relate to as they are more like us. While Abraham introduced us to a new type of high god, El, It was El's son Baal that would come to occupy more of the biblical narrative. The word Baal, recall, simply means Lord. So Baal, the rain god, is more formally known as Baal Hadad. Canaan is an arid land. Its inhabitants depend on rain to sustain life. Thus, the Canaanite god of rain and harvest, Baal, became more important than El among the Canaanites, and eventually among Hebrews. Hadad means thunder. Baal Hadad is shown here, wielding a lightning bolt, wearing the horns of a bull, and producing a harvest. The stele of Baal at Rite, from about 1500 BCE, was found in the ancient Syrian city of Ugarit. It's important to understand the power myth has over us. Here on this tablet from Ugarit, a city in ancient Syria, is part of the Canaanite creation myth, which features El and his family in their various roles. The tablet dates from around 1500 BCE. The story begins with El, the high god. El chose Yam, the sea god, to reign as king of the gods. Recall that ancient Mesopotamians thought life arose from the sea, so the sea god was often firstborn and should rule first. Yam is seen at the right on this ancient coin, which appropriately enough shows a ship on the back side. Yam, however, ruled the other gods harshly, so the gods complained to Asherah, the wife of El and mother of the gods. Asherah generously offered herself as a sacrifice if Yam would restrain himself. Asherah has a big role in Hebrew history. Baal, Asherah's son, objected to the degradation of Asherah and decided to battle Yam, the sea god. Yam sent messengers to El to demand Baal's surrender, but his messengers did not show proper respect to the gods, including El. Given magical weapons, Baal defeated Yam and cast him back to the sea. Baal then became king of the gods. The picture at right from Gustave Doré depicts the destruction of Leviathan, a sea serpent, in Isaiah 27. It borrows from the earlier myth of Baal, the rain and harvest god, defeating Yam, the sea god, and destroying his serpent servant Lotan. Mot, the god of death and the underworld at far right, objected to how Baal became king and made war upon Baal. Mot killed a doppelganger of Baal, and Baal, god of rain and harvest, went into hiding, thus bringing drought to the land. Here's a representation of the souls trapped inside the underworld. Though this image is from 1470 of the Common Era and represents the punishment of sinners at the return of Christ, the theme is ancient. Baal's sister Anat begged Mot to free Baal, release the rains to bring the harvest, but he refused, and so Anat killed Mot. But as there is no way to kill death, Mot reappeared, so Baal emerged from hiding to fight Mot. Baal's resurrection brought back the rains and harvest. The battle between life and death continued, with neither side prevailing. There will always be rains and drought. Mot, however, saw the tide of the gods turning against him, so he bowed before Baal, who then secured his place as king of the gods. Baal received permission from El to build a palace with no windows to prevent death from entering on Mount Zaphon, known today as Jebel el-Akra, on the northern coast of Syria near the Turkish border. Isn't that a fascinating myth and a fantastic way to explain the cycle of seasons? Celebration of this myth would, however, get a little weird for us, as the return of Baal from the underworld due to Anat's efforts was commemorated every year with ritual sex. We now return to consider El's wife, Asherah, again. She had huge influence over Hebrews and Canaan, as reflected in the Bible. She appears 40 times in the Hebrew Bible, though English versions often translate her name as grove, or in a few places as wood or tree. As mother of the gods, she was a powerful symbol of fertility, which both Hebrew female royals and the women of Jerusalem worshipped by burning incense, making drink offerings, and baking cakes with her image on it. Asherah, wife of El and queen of creation, was often symbolized by a tree or pole, which represented her as the tree of life. The association of Asherah with the tree likely came from the fact that the Hebrew word for goddess, Elat, is similar to the Hebrew word for the common terebinth tree, Elah, both being derived from the word for God, El. Asherah, the Bible proclaims, is found under trees and is made of wood. Many references in the Hebrew Bible indicate that Hebrews in Canaan adopted the Canaanite practice of worshiping trees, that is, Asherah. The practice of worshiping the tree goddess proved enduring. Some 1,500 years after Abraham ventured into Canaan, the land of El and Asherah, the prophet Jeremiah had to command, "Do not learn the ways of the nations or be terrified by signs in the heavens, though the nations are terrified by them. For the practices of the peoples are worthless. They cut a tree out of the forest, and a craftsman shapes it with his chisel. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with a hammer and nails, so it will not totter. Like a scarecrow in a cucumber field, their idols cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot walk. Do not fear them. They can do no harm, nor can they do any good." This stone relief from behind the throne of Ashur-nasir-pal II, king of Assyria from 883 to 859 BCE, allegedly shows the king, or two royal priests on either side of a sacred tree, above which is seen the sun god Shamash, or Ashur. Some believe the king or the priest are pollinating the sacred tree so that a king or the sun god may arise from it. Besides the king or priest are winged seraphim, called apculus. The sacred or royal tree as a symbol of fertility is ancient and present in the earliest Sumerian and Akkadian myths. In Canaanite mythology, the descendants of the king come from the fertilized tree of Asherah. The worship of Asherah became anathema to the prophets of Israel. The Hebrew Bible contains many exhortations to tear down any Asherim, the plural of Asherah. "You shall tear down their altars and break their pillars and cut down their Asherim," says Exodus 34:13, and also in Deuteronomy 7:5 and 12:3. "Thou shalt not plant thee a grove, Asherah, of any trees near unto the altar of the Lord thy God, which thou shalt make thee. Neither shalt thou set thee up any image which the Lord thy God hateth," says Deuteronomy 16:21 through 22. Nevertheless, as Judges 3:7 made clear, the sons of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgot the Lord their God, and served the Baals and the Asheroth. So you can see how the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden may have referred to the tree of Asherah, whom Hebrews were forbidden to worship. Adam and Eve's sin was not that they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This knowledge, it seems, would be good. The sin would be that they ate the forbidden fruit of polytheism and favored myth over monotheism, the knowledge of false gods over that of the real God. The snake, by the way, was a Canaanite symbol of immortality associated with Asherah. As you can see from what we've reviewed, Abraham did not establish lasting monotheism. That would take more than 1,000 years, but he listened to and obeyed a single God, and that was an important advance. And he became, as his name promised, the father of multitudes and the founding ancestor of 4 great religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the Baha'i faith. So why was it so important to believe in one God? Because if there is a single creator God who cares about us, our fate does not depend on making sacrifices to mythic gods. Having learned about the religion and culture into which Abraham was born, we turn next to ancient stirrings of monotheism in the plains of northern India.